and welcome to episode 91 of the Gaslec podcast. In this week's episode, what do we encourage here at Gaslec for DIYers to do within plumbing and heating of their own home? We have a scary situation from last week I want to run past you guys. Expansion vessels, and what issues can they cause and why do we need them? This and more in this week's episode. But first of all, here's my friend Sean to tell you a bit more about the podcast. Are you a new person coming into plumbing and heating? Are you a homeowner that likes a bit of DIY? Or are you a business owner and wanted a bit more knowledge before you make some decisions on your plumbing and heating? Stay tuned to the podcast and hopefully we'll be able to help you out with some of your questions. And welcome and thank you very much indeed for listening, guys. So this next section is for the DIYs out there. So we see a lot of social media posts and we'll try and help DIYers with some very basic homeowner stuff. So one of the big key things really is bleeding your radiators, and you don't need to be a plumber and you don't need to be a heating industry professional for that. It's actually quite a straightforward exercise to do. And it's where you can either get the hydrogen or the air within the system, and you might have some dirty water and it's starting to break down and the gases are coming off and it'll form and stop at the top of the radiator. And what that actually does is stops the hot water that's coming through the radiator, heating up the whole of the rad, which is also called the emitter of the heat, from working efficiently as it could. So then what will happen is we have the boiler on for longer and the pump running for longer to try and heat that space up, because we may be losing 5, 10, 20% of the top of the radiator where it's not getting as hot as the rest of it. So it really is important for some cost and energy saving tips to make sure all your rads are bled, which is a really simple thing to do. We've done some videos on bleeding radiators and there's plenty of stuff out there on YouTube as well. So, you know, as a homeowner, look it up, get confident and get the rads bled. And radiator keys you can get for about 50p to £1 at your local plumbers merchants as well. So setting your timer and your thermostats correctly. And that's realistically anything within your home, anything within your boiler, that all you do is you use these two things to push is a homeowner sort of thing, and it should be safe to do. If you've got to start getting tools out and taking casings off and stuff like that, that's when you know you've sort of crossed the line when you're doing that sort of stuff. Another thing we like to do is encourage homeowners and DIYs out there to set your timers and your thermostats correctly as well. So having your timer set correctly when you get up for work, when you leave for work, when you get in from work, and when you're home and what time you go to bed, etc. Setting that up correctly, making sure the right time set as well. The amount of times this time of year we're in the British winter time, and it's still set to the wrong hour, so it's sort of a little bit out there on your timings. Also make sure your thermostat's correctly, and if you've got a timer with a built-in thermostat, and that's actually quite easy to do, to set up different temperatures for the different times of the day. If you just have a timer and you have a thermostat and you just set it to one temperature and leave it, it's even more critical to get those timers just correct when you're out and about and you're not actually at home to enjoy it or benefit from it, I should say. TRV adjustments, you know, the thermostat in radiator valves that you get on your rads with the numbers typically 0 to 1 to 5 on your radiators. Getting those adjusted correctly is really, really important. Here at Gaslec, whenever we fit our new heating system or we fit new rads and valves, we always say to the customers, what we'll do is we'll set your lounge living areas to about 4, bedrooms to about 2.5, and hallways to about 3, just as a guide, and then just get the feel of it all and see how you feel. Unused rooms, would normally set those to sort of 1 to 1.5, so there is a little bit of water flow through the radiator just to take off the damp. Remember, if you do turn off the radiator completely in a room and create a very cold room in a warm house, the actual heat will be drawn under the doors. It'll be pulled through the walls to try and heat that space that's there. So it actually can be a little bit of a false economy when you're just trying to keep one place absolutely cold, with all the damp and all the other problems that can arise with unheated spaces in modern homes. So our suggestion would be to have it on low but not have it turned off. So topping up the pressure on your boiler. So you've got a sealed heating system. So it's important to keep the pressure, and generally speaking, unless you've got a Volcare or Ferroli, most boilers will sit at 1 bar cold. And so to top that up, you'll either have like the silver hose underneath the boiler somewhere with the 2 taps. Now all valves across the valve is off, and with the valve is on when you're lining up the little heads. Some have a little screwdriver you put in, and you do that, and just make sure that it is completely across the pipe, across the fitting. Otherwise it could be slightly on and the pressure will start to rise slightly. You may have an internal filling loop with inside the boiler, and it's sort of built underneath, like your Valents and your Worcesters, and those there will be within the boiler manual. When we fit a boiler, we show the customer how to top it up. But topping up the boiler is a homeowner DIY thing to do. If you can use these little things, then it's absolutely fine. If you start getting spanners and screwdrivers out, we're starting to cross the line here, what we should be doing. But all the time we can just use our hands on it, then it's absolutely fine usually. So why does, we had a question come in, I just remembered it actually, I haven't written it down on the auto cue. Why do we need pressure into a sealed heating system? Now, we actually don't need pressure into a sealed heating system. So all we need is water. So if we've got water in there and we've got enough water that there's no air and it's not under it's not pulling, it's under a bit of positive pressure. And the reason why we need pressure is so the boiler knows there's water in the system. So if you get a Worcester boiler, generally they'll go to a very, very, very low pressure before they cut off, and that's just off the 0 mark, because all it needs to know is there's water in the boiler, so it's not going to fire up dry and catastrophically fail. Our Valent boilers will run at about 0.8, 0.9 to 1 bar, and then obviously as you heat the water up, it'll expand up, but at cold it'll fire up around that sort of 0.8, 0.9 bars. When you start looking at your Ferrolis and your Volcares, the cheaper end of the boiler range, your Biassis and stuff like that, you may need 1.5 bar to 1 3/4 bar. Certainly with the early Alpha CDCB range, whichever one it was, they wanted a minimum of 1.5 to nearly 2 bar of pressure cold before the thing would kick in. And it's all down to the quality of the water pressure sensors excuse me, that they were using. So all it needs to know is, yes, there's water in here, I can fire up, because as the pump runs through, the water will take the heat away from the burner, from the flame, cool down the heat exchanger, and then transfer it from the fire to the heat of the water. And basically that's what the boiler does. And for those more confident DIYers out there, we can then start encouraging people to do things like change a tap and some rad valves as well. So, which is not a very difficult thing, but always remember is that when you approach these things, if it goes wrong, what do I do? If you take off a radiator valve, you think, oh, I'm going to change that little fella there because it's been playing me up for a little while. Do we do it A, Christmas Eve at 7:30 in the evening, or B, do we do it on an August maybe not a bank holiday, but an August morning when all the shops are open? We can maybe phone a local heating industry professional or a plumber locally to come to our aid if it all goes wrong. So I know what I won't be doing. I won't be doing it on Christmas Eve, I'll tell you that. So always have your bit of a disaster plan on what you're going to do, who you're going to call upon if it all goes a bit wrong. So what not to do within your plumbing and heating? So I sort of brushed upon it earlier on, your boiler casing. Now, it can get a little bit tempting. We did have a phone call a little while ago, and the guy was sort of self-diagnosing his own boiler. And I forget what it was now, it was a little while ago. And he said, oh, it's definitely the diverter valve or the whatever it'll be. I said, oh, how do you know that? Well, I've had all the case off the boiler. And I've gone in there and that's I've sort of diagnosed it myself. And I said, what do you do? I'm a car mechanic. And yes, that he will possess the practical skills of taking off a casing and using tools as well. But what's really, really important is that the boiler will use the air for combustion from outside, which is cold, maybe a little bit damp, but cold, fresh air, and it draws it in. It's not taking the air around us that we're breathing into the combustion. Now, if there was a problem with the burner within the boiler and it was leaking products of combustion, usually that will be dealt with inside the boiler and be spat out the flue. But if you've got the case off, it will spill into the room where you are, called like the spillage side, and it will come in. And that can have catastrophically effects with carbon monoxide poisoning. So casing removal, don't remove the case. Flue adjustments. Now, it might seem really, really obvious about adjusting the boiler flues. And actually, one area that we do get called upon is this new idea about insulating the outside of your home. So there'll be grants and people around the country coming along and putting insulation panels stuck to the outside of your house. So rather than trying to insulate on the inside, they stick it on the outside. So you haven't got to worry about all your decoration and stuff, and they'll usually render it over the top. So when this happens, we then start getting these Bob the Builder types, usually on some sort of government grant thing, which means it's just full of cowboys, in my own opinion, is that they start messing around with the boiler flue, because now technically it's too short. So they'll give it a bit of a pull, because the thing's like an accordion, surely it must do, and these things can start to come apart. So maybe not as a homeowner start adjusting the flue, but just be mindful. If anybody's working on your property and you start to be around by the boiler flue, just ask them, are they gas safe registered? Is it going to be checked? Are we going to turn it off? Are we going to get it checked by a gas safe engineer before it goes back on? So that is a real scenario and a real story that is there. So yeah, that wraps up the little DIY section for this week. So homeowners out there, you've had a new boiler and you've got an efficient system, which is fantastic, and that's all we want. But if you've got a poor system design, last week we had a job where we was called out to power flush a system. So he goes out there, and I'll get a call back of a couple of days later, a couple of the radiators weren't working downstairs. So I then goes out myself and says, right, okay, what have we got in this system here? Okay, boiler's out the back, lovely. That radiator next to the boiler, first on the system, that is Scorchio, a big old radiator from the 80s. Wow, that was proper hot. Okay, moving across. And there was the other side, there was a drop of 215 pipes feeding two radiators back to back. They were stone cold. Surface pipework, you can touch them. Both of the pipes were absolutely freezing. But one of the things I found is when I went to the boiler, the 222s that come out of the boiler come through the magnetic filter on the return one side and drop down, actually went straight down to 15 mil. So what we had is that basically we had a whole house central heating system on 50 millimeter pipe. So where the system wasn't balanced as well as it should be, we was now not getting a water flow through. And so what happens is when you've got undersized pipework in your property, we can't get the amount of energy that you need through that 15 mil pipe around to the heat system to heat everything up nicely. So what I had to really do was throttle down and try and balance the system as best I can to try and push the remainder heat and pressure up to the next radiator. Now, if this was kept all in 22, we wouldn't have had this at all. And the fact that the way it was all plumbed up and stuff, it really did look like a DIY installation, but from the 1980s. And of course, nowadays we're trying to lower the flow temperatures of the boilers for efficiencies, for that gas and energy saving, which gets even more and more difficult when you've got undersized pipework within the property. Correct boiler sizing. And the amount of conversations I've had, there was a guy insisting he wanted this 42 kilowatt combi or whatever it was. I was like, why do you want a 42 kilowatt combi? My mate told me I needed that. And that actually getting a massive boiler can actually cost you more money than getting one for the correct size of your property. So just be mindful, bigger isn't always better, and sizing the boiler correctly is really important. Going to jobs, and we've still got some of the old controls fitted. Now, this is a bit of a conversation that I do have. So let's just say it's an elderly couple, and they've had them controls in that cupboard there and that thermostat, and they've had them for the last 40, 50 years, and they know how to use them, and they're well in their 80s and they're happy with it. Should we change the controls over, potentially to save them a few bob, but for something completely alien to them, then they may not be able to use properly? And that's a conversation I have all the time. So my opinion is, if you're getting the homeowner and they're happy with what they got, and there's a chance that they won't understand, or they could end up sitting in the cold all the time, or sitting in a place that's far too hot because they don't know how to use the control, and they could be, or maybe they are vulnerable people in our community, I just let them say, if they're happy with it, they're happy with it. We can get more efficiencies from the new radiator, from the new boiler, and maybe a few new valves set up nicely and balanced, lovely, and then just keep their old school controls, what they're absolutely used to and they know how to use. Another one is, and the last on the list here, is sludge in the radiators. So it's a bit more difficult, it's the whole cold at the bottom, hot at the top, which sometimes that's a flow issue. It's not always sludge in the radiators, but that's the sort of the hot topic. That's the cool phrase to be using. You got sludge in your radiators. And when you pull it out, I've pulled that stuff out, and it has been like warm honey coming out of a radiator. It has been absolutely terrible. So that stuff, when it all starts accumulating, typically in open vented heating systems, that can really cost you a lot of money, because it's just like gloop, like gloop at the bottom of the radiator, and the water's trying to pass over the top of it and completely ignoring the bottom section. It's just there like warm honey just sitting there while the water's struggling over the top. And that will cost you 3-port valves, that will cost you heat exchangers, that will cost you pumps, eventually that will cost you radiators, and blocked pipes. Eventually that will get to an elbow and block it up, and then you've got to cut the thing out because the thing's gone rock hard, and no amount of power flushing will actually get it shifted as well. So for our commercial clients out there, so reactive maintenance is far more costly than planned maintenance. So if you've got yourself a warehouse, you've got yourself a restaurant, a care home, a nursery, whatever sort of business that you have, downtime and out of hours calls are actually are quite expensive. So just think about being reactive. You'll see that thing that's not working properly, it's starting to whistle. Get onto it, nip it in the bud. It will save you a lot of, if you've got something that's sensitive, like let's say you've got a children's nursery and it's the depths of winter, the snow is 2 foot deep on the floor, and now you've got no heating. You're going to have to shut the doors and send all those kids home. If you've got a small care home and you can't have any heaters in, your boiler's gone down, potentially you may have to start moving the residents, which will be, I dread to think of the cost of that. And where they're going to go as well, because almost every care home that we certainly go to is full up. So nipping in the bud is the most cost-effective way to do it. So being reactive to repairs. Obviously, you have, as a business owner, you have legal responsibilities for keeping up on a safe system and processes that you have. So your gas safety certificates are really, really important. Obviously, that all goes within your service, whatever industry that you're in. And you have landlord if you're renting, and employer duties as well. And another big thing is insurance implications. So, if you've not got a certificate for your hot water, your TMVs aren't being adjusted, your Legionella packs aren't being kept on top of, your stored cold water is open to the elements, and you've got all sorts of bugs doing a backstroke in it and stuff like that, then you could be into some serious trouble if there was a bit of an outbreak. And actually, locally, the Royal British Legion Village down in Alresford in the news last week actually had a report of Legionella being found within their water system. So I'll give you an example. Actually, there was a care home that we work in on the boiler side and the heat and hot water side, and we don't look after the kitchen side. It's quite a big kitchen. And another company did that, and they'd done the gas safety report only a few days prior. Then I'll get contacted on a Sunday saying, "Oh, help, 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 we've got no gas in the kitchen and we can't cook any food." So I goes there on a Sunday afternoon because I had a family commitment. And we turns up there, and there was this, basically it's like a fan control relay box that was there, and it was arcing and sparking all over. One of the contactors inside was starting to fail. And when they actually had that, it's been arcing and sparking for a while, and they had the gas safety inspection, and they noted it down that this thing was a bit temperamental and could do with being changed. Well, it weren't that many days later than the whole thing crashed and burned, and then there they are now having to order a fan control relay sort of box thing and get it fitted whilst the kitchen's in shutdown because they can't use the gas side of the cooking. So that has had a massive impact onto that care home financially by not getting on top of that as quickly as they should have done. So yeah, if you don't keep on top of your planned maintenance, then obviously emergency call-outs do have a big premium, especially if they're over the weekends, bank holidays, Christmas Day, and of the evening as well. So the benefits of having some planned maintenance, you have some predictable costs that you can sort of plan and budget in as well. Priority response, certainly here at Gaslec. If you're one of our loyal and existing customers, especially on the commercial side, you will get a priority response from our team. You've got reduced downtime, so you're not, you can plan for maintenance rather than, oh dear, it's now gone wrong and I've got to shut the place. And obviously you do get peace of mind knowing that you've done all you can to make sure that that system is working the best it can during that heavy winter period when it's needed. And wherever you are in the country, I'll always advocate using your local contractors rather than using the nationals, like your British Gas, your SourceServes, or your JLAs on the commercial side, or whatever you're doing. You'll always get a better response from a local gas safe installer. So I've got a few tips for some newbies out there. So we get little flurries that come in. I'm sure it's to do with end of term thingy-me-bobs there. And we get emails come in, and we get social media posts popping up left, right and centre. You get a few the old DMs as well coming along. And I want to give a few tips to some newbies out there. And it's be unusual in a usual world. So don't just send emails and Facebook messages. Practice your plumbing skills, post a video montage on YouTube, and do a video introduction introducing you and where you're from, and then what you've been doing as well. Whether you've been doing it at college, or you've been doing it at home, in your shed, in your garden, been helping out in your nana's house, or wherever it be. Create a little montage. Nobody's doing that. And that will really show that you've got a couple of skills there. You've got, like I am now, a little bit of presentation, presence about you, being able to talk to a camera. You've also got your practical skills that you've bent this pipe, or you've done this, or you've done this little plumbed up a radiator or a new set of taps, or whatever you've done, and show those skills off. And also it'll show off your little video production, putting stuff together skills as well. And I use stuff like Canva, which makes it a lot easier once you understand and get your head around it. But that just shows you a bit of you're confident to talk on camera, you're confident to show off what skills that you do have at the moment and where you're willing to go, and you've got a little bit of IT skills on bringing stuff together as well. And so bring that through, share that link, put it up on YouTube, share it on your social media, and then when you go door knocking, when you go and meet these people, these other plumbing engineers out there that you could be getting some work experience from, just say to them, hey, there's my link, check it out and let me know what's going on. So get to know the lingo and be confident, and that's my tips for you guys.